They laughed at the black janitor when the teacher told her to solve calculus as a joke, but what happened next made the whole class stand in silence. She picked up the chalk and changed her life forever. It was a bright Monday morning at Crestwood High. Students rushed into their classrooms laughing, and chatting teachers prepared their lessons for the day. But down the hallway near the math department, a quiet young woman pushed her cleaning cart. Her name was Naomi Carter, a janitor known for her calm smile and humble nature. She worked night shifts to pay her bills and studied books during her breaks, but no one ever noticed that part of her life. Naomi once dreamed of becoming a math professor. She loved numbers the way others loved music. But after her mother passed away and college became too expensive, she had to give up her studies. Instead of solving equations, she now scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans. Yet her heart never let go of math. Every night, she practiced on old notebooks, solving problems just for peace. In the math classroom stood Mr. Rogers, a proud teacher known for his arrogance. He loved showing off and mocking others, especially those he considered beneath him. When he saw Naomi sweeping near his board, he smirked. "Hey, Naomi, maybe you can help us today. We're doing calculus," he said it loud, so the students could hear the room burst into laughter. Naomi froze, holding her broom. She smiled politely and said softly, "No, sir, I'm just cleaning." Mr. Rogers grinned. "Oh, come on, you must know something simple. Why don't you solve this one?" Then he quickly wrote a massive equation on the board filled with symbols and integrals. Naomi looked at it, and her eyes flickered with recognition. It was advanced, but not impossible. She hesitated, then said softly, "Sir, that's an improper integral. You might need to check the limits again." The whole class went silent for a second. Mr. Rogers frowned. "What did you say?" Naomi pointed gently to the board. "The equation has a mistake, sir." The student on the left side gasped. "Because she was right, Mr. Rogers forced a laugh. "All right, genius. If you were so smart, come solve it." He stepped aside, handing her the chalk. Naomi wiped her hands on her uniform and quietly walked forward. The students whispered as she picked up the chalk and faced the board. Her heart pounded, but her mind was calm. Numbers came to her like music. She began writing step by step, line by line. The class watched as the messy symbols started to make sense. The girl who mopped floors now stood before them, solving what most of them could not even understand. The silence grew heavy. Only the soft scratch of chalk filled the room. Mr. Rogers crossed his arms, thinking she would make a mistake, but every move she made was precise. The limit she applied, the function she simplified. It was perfect. Finally, she turned around and said softly, "The answer is -2/3. A boy shouted out loud, "Wait, that's right." The calculator confirmed it. Mr. Rogers blinked, his face turning red with disbelief. Naomi handed the chalk back and said gently, "I just used substitution and symmetry rules, sir." The students clapped softly. Some whispered, "Wow, she's smarter than him." Others stared with a Mr. Rogers forced a smile and said sarcastically, "Well, anyone can memorize formulas." Naomi looked down and replied quietly, "No, sir, understanding them is different." That line hit the room like thunder. The students looked at her with new eyes. Mr. Rogers tried to dismiss it, saying, "All right, everyone back to work." But deep inside, he knew he had just embarrassed himself. By lunchtime, the story had spread across the entire school. The janitor who solved calculus, the woman who outsmarted Mr. Rogers. Students gathered in hallways, whispering Naomi's name. Some called her the math queen. Others said she must have cheated, but Naomi ignored it all. She kept doing her job, quietly cleaning the cafeteria, picking up trays, and wiping tables. One student named Liam, who was struggling with math, came up shyly and said, "Miss Naomi, can you help me with my homework?" She smiled. "Sure, let's take a look." He showed her a page of problems, and within minutes, she explained it in a simple way. Liam's eyes widened. "That's the first time I ever understood calculus." Soon more students began to come to her after classes. Naomi started a small study group in the evenings, teaching anyone who wanted help. She did it for free because knowledge to her was not about money, it was about purpose. Meanwhile, Mr. Rogers grew bitter. He could not stand how everyone talked about her. He told the principal she was distracting students. The principal said, "Actually, Mr. Rogers, I've received several reports of improved test scores. Maybe you should thank her." Mr. Rogers clenched his jaw. "She is not a teacher. She is a janitor," he muttered, but the truth was spreading faster than his pride could contain. Days turned into weeks, yet the whispers about Naomi kept spreading through the halls of Crestwood High. Students looked at her differently. Now, not with mockery, but with admiration. Some even greeted her with a smile each morning, saying, "Miss Naomi, I solved that problem you showed me yesterday." She would nod proudly and say, "I knew you could." But not everyone felt joy about it. Mr. Rogers, the math teacher, whose ego was bruised beyond repair, could not stand watching a janitor receive more respect than him. He started giving his students tougher exams and said, "You think you can learn from a cleaner? Let us see how well that goes." But to his shock, the students improved even more because they studied secretly with Naomi in the evenings. The principal, Mr. Lewis, noticed this transformation. He called Naomi into his office and said, "Miss Carter, I have never seen such a change in our students. You have done something even our certified teachers could not." She smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir. I just love seeing young minds believe in themselves." He nodded approvingly. Then came the announcement that would test everyone: the city's annual Math Challenge Championship, the competition where teachers and students from across the district would gather to prove their brilliance. It was not just a contest. It was prestige, honor, and reputation. Mr. Rogers saw it as his redemption. He wanted to prove he was still the best. He told his class, "This year, we will win no matter what. I do not want distractions, and that means no janitors helping anyone." But the students were already loyal to Naomi. She had become their secret mentor. The night before the contest, Naomi stayed late. After cleaning, helping Liam and the others practice, she looked over their notes and said with calm wisdom, "Remember, math is not about fear. It is about patterns. You do not fight the problem, you understand its rhythm." The next morning, the team boarded the bus for the competition. The air was tense. Naomi came along only because the principal requested her to assist with preparations, not as a competitor, but as a silent supporter. When they reached the auditorium, filled with hundreds of people, Mr. Rogers stood in his crisp suit full of pride. He whispered to himself, "Today, I take back my dignity." The competition began rounds of rapid-fire questions and problem-solving challenges. Students from other schools stumbled, but Crestwood advanced quickly thanks to the methods Naomi had taught them. Soon, they reached the final round. The judges announced an open challenge question meant for teachers only. Mr. Rogers confidently stepped forward. The question appeared on the board, and his heart sank. It was an extremely complex differential equation with trigonometric substitution, something he had not practiced in years. He stood frozen, his hand shaking slightly. The audience murmured. The judges glanced at each other, whispering, "He is struggling." Then a quiet voice from the back whispered the solution. Naomi had seen the problem before. Her mind broke it down piece by piece. Within seconds, she leaned toward Liam and said softly, "The answer lies in symmetry. Tell him to use reduction formula." Liam raised his hand, trembling. "Sir, I think we can solve this." Mr. Rogers turned annoyed. "What do you know, boy?" Liam replied. "Miss Naomi explained this method last night. Maybe you should let her try." The audience turned. Naomi hesitated, but the judges nodded. "Please step forward." She walked to the board, calm and focused. The chalk touched the surface, and her hand moved like poetry. Every step clear, every operation graceful. She simplified the massive equation, and within minutes wrote the final answer. The judges checked their key and then clapped. "That is correct." The crowd erupted in applause. The principal smiled proudly. Mr. Rogers stood speechless, his pride shattered. Naomi turned around, bowed her head slightly, and said softly, "I'm just glad our school could make it this far." The students rushed to hug her, chanting, "We did it, Miss Naomi, you saved us." For the first time in years, Mr. Rogers had no words left. After the competition, the story spread beyond Crestwood. It reached the school district headquarters and even local newspapers. The headline read, "Janitor outsmarts teachers, wins math challenge." For Crestwood High, students took pictures with her. Journalists came to interview her, and people from all over town started sending letters of admiration. 1 week later, the superintendent visited the school. Personally, Mr. Lewis introduced him to Naomi. She stood humbly in her simple uniform. The superintendent smiled. "Miss Carter, I have read about your story. It is inspiring. Tell me, where did you study to learn calculus like that?" She replied, "I was a mathematics student at Stanford University. I had to leave after my mother passed, but I kept studying whenever I could." The superintendent was amazed. "Stanford, you mean you have formal education in advanced mathematics?" She nodded quietly. "I never stopped learning even after leaving college, because math was my peace, my escape, my dream." Mr. Rogers, who overheard the conversation from the hallway, felt his knees weaken. He approached slowly, unable to meet her eyes. He said, "Miss Carter, I did not know." She smiled gently. "It is all right, sir. No one ever asked." He sighed. "You deserve more than this position. You belong in front of the board, not behind it." She nodded kindly. "Perhaps But I never forgot why I started. I just wanted to help young minds see beauty in logic. A week later, an official announcement was made at the school assembly. The principal stood on the stage holding a certificate. "This is a new beginning," he said. "We are proud to announce that Naomi Carter will now serve as an assistant math instructor for our district. She will receive a scholarship to complete her degree. In return, as a full teacher," the students screamed. With joy, the gym echoed with applause. Naomi stood on stage, her eyes shining with tears of gratitude. She looked at the same board where she once held a broom and said softly, "Never let where you stand decide who you are. Sometimes life hides genius." In the simplest uniforms, the students cheered louder, chanting, "Professor Naomi, Professor Naomi." After the ceremony, Mr. Rogers approached her quietly, his voice low and sincere. "I owe you an apology, Miss Carter. I misjudged you. I let pride blind my respect." She smiled warmly. "I accept your apology, sir. True education begins with humility." That night, as Naomi walked home under the silver moonlight, she felt free for the first time in years. The city lights shimmered like equations written across the sky. Every number, every symbol, every step she had taken led her to this moment. She realized she had solved not just a mathematical problem, but the greatest equation of life. The sum of struggle multiplied by perseverance always equals success. From that day forward, she was no longer the janitor of Crestwood High. She became Professor Naomi Carter, the woman who turned mockery into inspiration, the teacher who proved that knowledge shines brightest when the world tries to dim its light. And every time a student doubted themselves, Naomi would smile and say, "Remember, genius has no uniform, only passion." Like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of power, courage, and hidden brilliance.